give you a second.
Okay. Perfect.
All right, so we will officially get started. Thank you all for coming and being patient and figuring this thing out with us. At first, I wasn't sure if y'all were coming. It's okay. We were going to eat the food anyway. All right, so this is our third leadership speaker series. And my name is Jesse Ross, of course, and I got two of my friends, which I was telling them I invite my friends to do this because I'm big on relationships, and I think it's just good to put people that you know up. And so I'm not going to introduce you. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. We can start with who you are, where you're from, what you do. The short version, don't worry, I'm going to ask you all questions. They already know. They asked me what to prepare for, and I told them I was going to ask them some questions, and that was all I gave them. So it's meant to be a little informal. So.
Okay, who I am, what I do, and where I'm from?
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Francine Holbert. I am from Minnesota, Maplewood, Minnesota originally, and I work for Target Corporation, and I do product design and development, operations management, and I'll explain that a little later.
Okay.
That's what I do. It's long for no reason.
Exactly.
And I'm DJ Hill. I'm from here, from Minneapolis, and I'm a financial advisor at Wells Fargo. Just some floors up.
Okay, so Connext, just to give you a little background, is designed to, it's a young professionals network, talent development network. And so basically we have a ton of high school and college age professionals who are trying to figure out how to navigate their career. And so all of this is going to be like, where you at, where you from, how did you do that? So I want to ask you, what was your first job? Like, real job that you got paid for, like you got a check for it, not cash under the table. And it could be anything. Last time we had somebody who had like manure. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, my first job, I worked at a fitness center, and I did customer service, so people would come in and I'd put wristbands on them, and I would do memberships for the fitness center, very similar to like a YWCA or Lifetime. So that was my first job. Yeah.
My first job, I worked at Starbucks. I was a barista. Yeah, I knew one of my friends worked there, and I just worked there like, cool, so we can hang out.
That's what's up. Okay. What was your first professional job? And I don't know if you count that as professional, so then what was your second one? Like because most people ask the question like, what was your first like real job? Like, oh. And I'm gonna keep bouncing around. Don't worry.
Okay. I guess that job became professional because I started working there in high school. So I think I was about 15 years old when I started, and then I worked my way up to manager. So I started managing the facility. And then while I was doing that, I worked for Trader Publishing, doing ad writing. So Auto Trader used to have like a magazine division, and I would write the magazines and like take in the ads about cars. I knew nothing about cars. I just typed. So those were my first real jobs.
Okay, hold on. So you worked at a fitness center?
I did work at this center.
And you did
Ad writing.
Yeah. How does that work? How does that connect?
It doesn't.
Okay.
It's called being in college and you can check.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it. What about you?
For me, real corporate job. So I played professional basketball for almost a decade. So that was like my real job.
If you didn't say that.
Yeah. And then, well, this is actually my first real job, working for Wells Fargo Advisors in corporate America. I mean, I worked at Starbucks for 2 months and I quit because he was like, this is a joke. So, this is my first real job.
Got it. Okay, so tell me a little bit about like your college journey, where you went to school, what you studied, if you changed your major 8 times or not, like even when you were in school, what you were trying to do while you were in school, like if you were trying to make it to the league, were you trying to be the best, the own 18,000 fitness centers, like what was that like when you were in college?
Wow, okay. So I went to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, and I knew I wanted to be a journalist because I used to watch Ninja Turtles, and April McCoy was the reporter, and I saw her, and she was always with them, and she knew where the action was, and I was like, I'm going to be April. And so I always knew that journalism or reporting the news was like that's what I just liked being in the know and knowing what was going on. So that was always in the back of my mind. It didn't change, even though I worked at the fitness center. I was also a tutor too. I was doing all kinds of things. I just needed to, pay for school. So I did that pretty much my entire college career. And my father actually worked for the University of Minnesota too in administration, so there was no way I wasn't going to go to the University of Minnesota. Like, I was bred to be a gopher. And so it was an interesting experience. I mean, I didn't change my major at all. I was pretty confident that that was what I wanted to do, but within my major, the type of reporting that I wanted to do changed. So at first I wanted to do current events reporting, and then I was like, I want to get into documentaries. And then I was like, well, I want to get into sports documentaries. I'm just going to put that together, So it kind of changed a lot. And then, yeah, that was kind of like my college journey. Okay.
All right.
Do you want me to do that again?
Yeah. This is why I told you this is real.
Okay.
This is real.
It's a work in progress. Right?
Yeah.
All right,
That's the name of her podcast, by the way.
You saw how I
just
put
slid
that in there?
Right.
Yes. Okay. So I went to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. I always knew that I wanted to go after journalism. I want to study journalism. My major never really changed. Pretty much stayed the same. I was pretty consistent. So, but within the major, I wasn't sure what I wanted to go after. So I kind of switched from wanting to do current events reporting, so like on your Channel 5 nightly news, to like making documentaries. But I really love sports, so I was like, okay, I want to be a sports documentary journalist, whatever that was. And I just kind of fused that together. But I didn't go up and down between like different majors. That was what I wanted to do, and that's what I studied.
For me, I went to school. I went to school for basketball, so that was my original thing. So originally, I had no Division I scholarship, so I ended up going to Midland Junior College in Texas. So I went there on basketball scholarship. Did my first year. I was kind of naturally smart, so I had like a natural gift. I never really had to work at school. I was kind of smart. So when I left there after the first year and went to Ohio State, I wanted to go to a school that had engineering. So I wanted to be an astronautical engineer. I wanted to be an astronaut. So I went to school for engineering. But engineering, as you know, is like very rigorous. Yeah. So playing at a school like Ohio State, which is like you're on TV every single night, you're flying everywhere, so you're missing a lot of classes. So I got to my junior year, and I had to take quantum physics 390. And there was no way I can take it and practice at the same time. The classes only offered once a year because it's such a small field that it was offered at the same time as practice, but you can't move practice around. So I was forced to change my major because if the NCAA compared me to a regular student, it'll look like I'm not progressing towards my major if I miss this class. And this is a prerequisite for a lot of other classes. So I'll never forget, I had my favorite teacher in my life. I called her because I was talking to my advisor, and they're like, you got to change your major. What do you want to do? It's like right now, it's an inflection point. And I just snapped on him, told him, I'm not changing my major. I came here for a reason. So what I did was I talked to this teacher, and she told me because I had so many math credits, to get an applied math degree. And then just transfer and get a Bachelor of Science in Econ, because it's very broad. And she had just told me about her son who worked for the government, and he's like engineering and like crazy, and got this crazy high up job. So that's what I went for, and it allowed me to do a lot of broad things. Even though I knew I wasn't going to use my degree for a long time. So basketball was my thing. But yeah, so I ended up getting applied math and economics degree.
Got it. So you knew, even though you were like, yo, I'm trying to play ball, I'm trying to make it to the league, overseas, whatever that thing is, you knew at some point you would do something related to economics.
Yeah, well, I knew, this is what I knew, that I wanted to help people. And I knew I wanted to make my mama proud. Yeah, so my mom wanted me to do something. She would always tell me, your life is going to truly start when you get done with basketball. Because when you play basketball, you live kind of in a bubble. So I just knew I wanted to help people. And I knew having a degree in economics, I can go into a wide range of fields and still, get paid, but help people.
That's what's up. Would both of you tell a little bit, background, where you grew up, how you grew up? You should tell a little bit about culture. just give people kind of insight. I think one of the things that we've realized as we've done these is what we try to do is kind of break down the super long job title, right? Or the perception of this person has been doing this for however long, and they work in the ideas building, they work at Target Corporation, but like you just a regular person, you grew up with in the hood or not in the hood, but in Maplewood. So tell a little bit about like your background, where you grew up, siblings, family, that whole deal.
Yeah. So my family actually is originally from Liberia, West Africa. My dad's side of the family, or the Tolbert family, was actually in politics. So my uncle was the president of Liberia. In 1980, he was assassinated by a master general, and so my dad had to go into hiding because of that. So he hid for several months. So he worked with his friends and family members to help get a visa. When he finally got a visa, he ran to the airport, and soldiers were looking for him. He eventually made it onto a plane and came to the United States to seek asylum. Basically, it's when you're coming to the United States and saying, I'm in danger, my life is in danger, can I please stay here? He was denied. But during that time, my father actually was going to law school, so he was studying to be a lawyer. So he argued his case because if anyone knows the history of Liberia, Liberia is made up of freed slaves from the United States. And so his argument to the United States was that I'm actually an American because of my slave roots, and he won his case to stay here in the United States. So it's a pretty tragic situation, but with God's help, he was able to stay here. He never argued another case. He actually never went to pursue his law degree here in the United States after that. So that's kind of the history background of my family from West Africa. My parents moved to the north side of Minneapolis first, my dad's first job. So this was a lawyer whose family was in politics and all of that. His first job was at McDonald's. And so he had to work his way up. So we lived in Minneapolis, and then we moved to St. Paul, and eventually my parents saved enough money for us to move to Maplewood, which is more or less a working class suburb. So I have an older sister who also works for Target in HR strategy, and I have an older brother who works for the Department of Veteran Affairs, and then there's me. And then my family has always taken in people. My parents have taken in aunts, uncles, cousins, so at any given time there's always 10 or more people living in my house. So even though we had a regular sized house in the suburbs, we had 20 people in that place, running in and out. My parents, whenever somebody needed something, they always took people in. So that allowed me to kind of learn about just helping people. Even if they're not going to give you any help back, everybody needs a helping hand. And the ability to even come to the United States for them was such a huge deal that they wanted to help make that transition as smooth as possible for everybody else. So that was kind of the family that I grew up in, and it was very, very close-knit family. Eventually, the Liberian community has grown immensely. In fact, Minneapolis, or I should say Brooklyn Park, has the highest Liberian population in the United States. So, yeah, that's kind of my cultural background. Wow.
So I'm from Minneapolis, man. My dad ain't never. I don't come. Nobody in my family's went to college. I was the first one. My dad barely didn't graduate high school. Got his GED. My mom graduated high school, but she actually didn't accept her diploma. She went to the Navy so we can make it. So my dad accepted her diploma. So I'm one of 9 siblings. We grew up with not a lot. My dad doesn't know nothing but basketball. So that was his gift to us, to show us I would come home. We would go to AAU tournaments, and my dad would use the bill money so we could go to AAU tournaments. And he was like, one day, all this sacrifice for basketball, y'all going to be able to go around the world and use basketball as that vehicle. So my dad really didn't teach us much about basketball. And then my mom taught us about life and just living for God and everything. And then from that, we used basketball as a tool to get scholarships, to travel the world, to bridge social gaps, to meet people. When you're a kid from the hood and you're very, very good, a lot of times suburban or white families will take you in because you got a gift. And so that was my vehicle to be able to meet people, to be able to do different things. So that's the culture I came up in, with 9 brothers and sisters. It's not a lot to go around. You run a lot of hand-me-downs. I remember, Nina can attest to this. I went to South. I never cared nothing about clothes. I grew up, not caring about clothes. So I went to North. Then I seen that, how you dress matter. I'm thinking like, so I came home and I told my mom and dad, like, I need some new clothes. I can't be wearing this hand-me-down stuff. Like, yeah, so
I love it.
that's my story.
I think that's important. So both big families, both figured it out at some point. So how did you tell me a little bit about how you got to Target? Tell me a little bit about how you got to Wells Fargo.
Wow, it was definitely a journey. So I'm going to back up a little bit. Around graduation time, I was engaged and I was going after my dreams, and I was like, I scored an internship. It was like a prerequisite at Channel 5, and I was like, yes, I'm going to do this. Then I found out that I was having a baby. And so I was like, okay, well, I can do this. It's going to be okay. Around the time I graduated, the market crashed. And so I was still working at Trader Publishing at the time. I was like, all right, well, nothing's happened to us yet. I'm going to graduate. I'm just going to stay here for a while. I ended up graduating. I was about 9 months pregnant and went to work one day, and HR was there. And they were like, we're just letting you know we're shutting down the magazine division. You're not going to have a job. So that sent me into labor. So I got laid off on a Monday, and I had my daughter on a Saturday. Probably the most stressful point in my life because there were no jobs available at all. So from 2008 to 2010, I was trying to do anything that I could do to get a job. So I started from the bottom and worked my way up. I did catering, so if there was a catering job I could do, I did that. I worked at DSW shoe store. I just needed money because I was raising a family. And also at that time, my ex-husband at the time had injured his back. He was a mover, and so there were times where he couldn't even walk. So I had to figure out how am I going to make money for this family? So I even got on assistance with, but because I got unemployment, I did not qualify for actual food stamps. So it was a very, very hard time in my life. But it taught me a lot. It taught me how to be tough, taught me how to be resilient. And one thing that my mother always told me was sometimes you have to stoop to comfort. And so even though I had all this experience, I was like, you know what, I'm going to start from the bottom and I'm going to get back to where I want to go. So I bounced around a lot, did catering. My mother then decided that she wanted to open a catering company, so I helped her open that, and I would work for her. I also started doing small parties with another friend of mine, so we would cater parties. We would help people if they wanted to have a party. We would kind of help them prep their food, and then we would do back-end prep and pick up, and just all kinds of things. I worked temporarily at 3M in market research. I also worked, for the convention center. I did a short-lived, it was a temporary position for Target.com then in 2009. And then after that, there were zero opportunities. So I was just kind of working where I could, collecting my unemployment, trying to figure out my next move, always searching for a job. I would do a million interviews and I would get no's. And then eventually in 2010, July of 2010, I got a call from Target. And they were like, hey, we'd like you to come back, but we want you to start as a sourcing specialist. And I was like, I didn't even know what that was. I was like, I'll take it. Do you have benefits? I'll take it. Whatever it is, I'll do it. So I started working in sourcing, and that's where product comes from. So working with vendors and entering in data. Eventually, I worked my way out of that, and I moved into product design and development. And literally, I was opening boxes of samples of product and setting them and staging them. Has nothing to do with my degree. I didn't go to school for this at all. But I was like, this will get me to the next level. So then I did that for about a year and a half, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to get into a salary position. So I just applied, and eventually I took a position in store operations, and I was there for many years, and I worked my way from specialist to senior business partner, and I just dealt with problems. So whenever there were problems in the stores that affected all of the stores, global issues, I figured out how to solve it, who I need to contact, how we communicate to the stores, and how we communicate to leadership on what was happening. It was escalation management. It was extremely stressful, there were times where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm affecting all the stores. No one's going to be able to buy product. I ended up figuring things out. It was a crazy time, but I learned a lot. And it wasn't anything, again, that I necessarily wanted to do, but I know that it was going to give me the experience to get to where I needed to go. So eventually, I would say actually recently, I decided to make a jump from operations management in stores to product design and development to go back. So I went from opening their boxes to telling them how to open their boxes. Okay? So that was my next move, and I've been there for going on 2 years now, and I love it. I love working on the other side of it. So I currently do the operations management in support of all of the essentials product, beauty product, electronics, goodness sakes, travel, and sporting goods. And so I help them figure out if we're going to develop product, how are we going to develop it? What are the standard steps that need to happen? What are the touch points with leadership, with the vice presidents, with all of the different areas that are supporting it? We call it a cross-functional team. What do they need to do to be able to say, yep, we're going to move forward on this product? No, we're not. How many touch points do we need to have? What does that need to look like? If they are developing product, what technologies do they need to have to be able to develop product? How do they need to communicate with vendors? What's the best technology to use there? What type of tools, what type of space do they need? So yeah, I support a lot of designers and technical engineers. I work with food scientists sometimes, all for developing product and getting the best product out for the guests.
All right, so I'm gonna ask PJ to do his, but then I want to open it up for you all who have questions for them. So it's not meant to just have me talking and asking questions. So, hey, tell me your journey.
All right. So I graduated college, and then so I was thinking, come from college, go to the NBA. So I had like a rough patch at the end of my senior year, and so then I'm like, man, I kind of fell out with the coach a little bit. So I came home not knowing what I was going to do, and so, but at the end, right before we went to the NCAA tournament, I got a message on Facebook, like, sorry, I never told you, but you got a 2.5-year-old daughter. So that kind of like changed my whole world. So when I graduated, I said, okay, now I got to go figure out, for my daughter, and then try to go figure out the place. So I flew down there to like go to court and just like meet her. Ended up taking her with me, and she ain't seen her mom since. So that was 9 years ago. I've had her all by myself since then. So I take my daughter, I come back home, and I'm figuring like, okay, now I'm trying to play professional. I went from living a life chilling with my guys who are all getting drafted in the NBA to now I got a daughter. Like, you can't really do, much with a daughter. So I would be out with my friends. I have my daughter right there. Like, I ain't know no better. 1 a.m. I'm just going to be a dad, I'm going to just be a dad. So I would bring her to the gym, do everything. So when I came back, I played the NBA Summer League. I ended up not playing because a guy who was on like injured reserve kind of took my spot and then played over me. So, there's nothing you can do if you got a suit on, like on the bench. You don't got no opportunity. So the team I was going to go play for overseas in Europe kind of dropped my contract. So then I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I just, understand, came from college, like living the best life. Big time school, flying on private jets to like, now I got nothing. I can't go back home with my mom and dad because there's 10 people living there. Ain't nowhere for us to go. So I ended up moving in with my ex-girlfriend, Key, and my daughter, her boyfriend, and her sister. Yeah, so her sister and then her boyfriend. So it's 5 of us in a 2-bedroom, and I was just grinding. Like, I would walk to work, take my bike, take the bus with my daughter, like really had nothing. Ended up buying a Camaro, working out, working at the gym every day, just working on my goal, knowing that I could play professional. So fast forward, 1 year goes by, so now the NBA draft is about to come again the following year. So the gym that I'm working at, this guy named Jordan Taylor walks in, and I see him coming in with a bunch of scouts and NBA agents and all that. So I'm working out every day. I'm hungry. So then I asked the guy who run the gym about to work him out, can I hop in the session with him? And so he's like, yeah, you can hop in. Man, I get into the session, I kill him. I just play unbelievable, So then I had a guy come up to me and was like, I don't know who is who. I think you Jordan Taylor. I'm like, nah, I'm PJ. I just work here. And he's like, yeah. So he's like, man, you too good to be here. Like, if I get you a job playing professional, would you go? And I'm like, yeah. So now I don't hear from the guy for like a couple of months, and then he called me like, man, I got you a job in Europe. You know, I said, all right, I'll be ready. 1 week, got my stuff together, left. Then the rest is history. First year I went MVP, and then I just kept playing, killing. Okay, so then I went to China. I played, and I had an unbelievable season, and you know, I made more money than I've ever made in my life. So now we're to the point where we ain't gotta worry no more. So I go to Russia, I play, and the last year in Russia, I tear my Achilles, the last game of the season. So now I'm like, dang, right when I get to the point where like my life is about to change forever, I get hurt. So every summer I'm still coming back training kids. So like I'm running this basketball facility, 43 hoops. So I'm the head trainer. A lot of these kids who I train, very, very wealthy kids, got gyms in their house, you know, nannies is bringing them. You'll never really see their dads. And so I'm dealing with these kids every day, like for 6, 7, 8 years, you know, that I've been doing it. So one of the dads is coming in, and it doesn't matter if it's 11 a.m., 1 p.m., 9 a.m., he's showing up every time. So then one day I asked him, like, man, what you do? You know, like, because the dads don't usually show up. I deal with the moms and the nannies. And he's like, I'm the vice president of investments at Wells Fargo. I'm like, dang, I'm looking for somebody to help me manage my money. So he's like, all right, let's set up a meeting. So I set up a meeting with him, and I get in there, and then, you know, he said, before we talk about your money, what you want to do after basketball? So I'm like, you know, probably just run this gym, but I don't really know. And so he told me, like, I don't really talk about God or politics when it comes to money. You got to be very neutral because people are on both sides of each fence, you know. So he said, I was watching the U.S. Open, and they start talking about athletes going broke because of bad advisors. Then he said, I heard a voice in my ear, and it was like the angels, and they told me to make you a multi-millionaire. And I'm like, what? So he said, my jaw dropped. So I'm like, what? So he said, listen, if I can pay you 6 figures for the first 3 to 5 years and 7 figures after that, and you take over the business, would you be interested? So I'm like,
Hold on, pause.
yes, yes.
Say that one more time.
If I can pay you 6 figures for the first 3 to 5 years, you be my junior partner. Then after that, 7 figures, and you take over the business, would you be interested? So I'm like, man, what? So I played 1 more year overseas after I get my Achilles. I studied, you know, for my Series 7, 63, 65, 66, take all my licenses tests. And my promise to him is like, you know, look, I'll be ready. You know, when I get the opportunity, I'll do all the legwork before. You know, these tests is hard. So my Series 7 test, it was 7 hours. Yeah, and understand, I ain't been in school in 9 years now, you know? Like, it was tough. And then when you're in the financial market, anybody can test this, any job that you come into, the lingo is the hardest thing to catch up to if you haven't been paying attention. So, like, the nomenclature was going over my head. So I paid for myself to do a class, and I actually took the class 3 times over because I got so cool with the professor. And so, you know, you take these practice exams, and they're like 3.5 hours each. And I remember the first practice exam, Nina knows and my wife know, I took it and I felt so crazy, like low 30%. I was like, oh no. You know, like I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, but, you know, I don't have nothing to go back to. So that's my thing, like I got to be able to do it. So I ended up taking 65 practice exams at 3.5 hours each. Just because I can't leave it to chance. You know, I got a wife, I got a daughter, I done built a lifestyle for myself. Like, I gotta make it. So I passed that test and then passed all the tests, and then, you know, it's almost going on 2 years that I've been doing it, so it's been good. So I got, you know, mine is kind of like a blessing. You know, you meet the right people at the right time, and that's how I got into this.
I didn't know all of that. But that was
Powerful story.
Yeah. So, all right, what you got? You done heard a lot. I purposely crafted it this way because I knew their stories were completely different but very similar. So, what do you got? What do you want to know? I got plenty of questions. Don't worry. Go for it.
Hi, sorry I came late. We were coming away from
It's
something.
good.
No.
It's good.
So how did you guys deal with like failure and setback in terms of like the process of like picking yourself back up, and like how do you deal like thought process, like what do you tell yourself, and like do you have a support group or support system?
To be honest with you, I didn't deal with it very well. I was young. I was like 20, one, when I had my daughter, it wasn't expected. I didn't know how to deal with it. I came from a very strict African home. You don't talk about your feelings, you don't talk about your emotions, you don't talk about the fact that you don't feel good about what's happening around you. You just get up and go to work, or you figure it out. So I was dealing with all those emotions. I was a new mom. I didn't get time off. I didn't have a baby room or any of those things. Like, I had a 1-bedroom apartment, and my baby stuff was in a corner. I mean, I didn't deal with it well. I definitely, I blamed myself because I wanted to give her a certain type of lifestyle. And I always told myself in the back of my mind, like, if you ever have kids, and this isn't going to happen until you're 37, and you're going to have a house, you're going to do this. This is how it's supposed to be. And it didn't end up like how I told myself it was supposed to be. And so I struggled. I wanted to be an example. My parents really pushed school and doing a great job. And when I told my father that I was pregnant, and he was a deacon in the church, he was devastated. I mean, I could see the devastation in his face at the time. But the moment that my daughter was born, his whole mindset shift. He was actually the one that rushed me to the hospital. So even though we weren't speaking for a while, as soon as she came into the world, like, everything changed, and it kind of motivated me to do better. But even during those times where I had her and I didn't have any money, I think that was the lowest one. I was like, how am I supposed to take care of somebody? I can barely take care of myself, and I have these student loans that I need to pay. So I wish I could say that I just picked myself up and I dust myself off. I didn't. I wallowed a lot. I cried a lot. I was like, how am I going to figure this out? And then I would wipe my tears and I would go to work or try to find a job or whatever the case may be. Looking back, I wish I would have done things differently. I did have a network of family, but I felt so ashamed and disappointed in some of the decisions that I had made that I didn't feel comfortable going to them and be like, I really messed this up, or I don't really know what I'm doing in this space. I've since learned to, if something isn't going right, ask for help. It'll help you out. But yeah, that's how and eventually I was able to kind of build off of that and grow, but that took a long time to do. Like I said, I didn't do it back then, but I definitely do it now.
Now, to piggyback off her, she's right. It's actually not easy. I think one gift that I always had, I got drive. And I've always seemed like when everybody else taking the elevator, got to take the stairs. But I had one experience that changed my life. So my senior year, my junior year in basketball, I played unbelievable. And then I said going into my senior year, like, I'm going to play a lot. And for them first 10, 15 games, I didn't play 1 second. That crushed me because my whole life up until that point was basketball. But, I used to always say to myself, I can make it through this, I can make it through anything. So then once I got through that, that was kind of like the foundation for me to keep going. And what drove me is to be able to say one day to them people, I made it. But then when you get successful, you don't say that because you grow up. And then I always learned, I watch a lot of motivational speeches. It's actually not the goal that you achieve. It's so true, who you become in the process. So I remember, times when I first came back from overseas and I was studying for a year and I wasn't working. Let me tell you, I had nothing. I had spent all my money to where I had nothing. If you look at your bank account and it's ain't no way I can spend all this money to the point where you get down to nothing, then it's scary, And I had people in my life who would be supporting me, like my wife, Nina and her significant other, my boy Kajo, just having those people around to see you and you say, we can keep going. You look at them going to struggles and it's you got people watching you, so you can't quit. I got my 9 brothers and sisters looking at me, so anytime I think about quitting, I say, I got to keep going because it's people who depending on me to go and be strong to make it.
How do you define success?
That is a good question. Happiness, for me, being happy, being content with where I'm at. I'm able to take care of myself, take care of my daughter, live a life that I'm proud of, and continue to go after additional things that I want. success for me is, those would be my main things. And I don't necessarily consider myself successful, and like I'm always challenging myself to do more. So once I accomplish one thing, I'm like, what's the next thing that I can do? What's the next thing that I do? I have a ton of drive. Like I want to just keep going. But for me, it's like with everything that I'm doing, am I able to take care of myself and am I happy? So for me, that's what success is.
Yeah, that's a great answer. For me, similar. My thing is, as long as you're going towards anything that you want to do, you're successful. So that's my thing. Like, you can be being a janitor. As long as you're the best janitor, then you're successful. So for me, like, if I got my family, if I, like, going towards helping people, living out the mission that God and the will that God had for my life, that just defines success for me. Now, it may be different for a lot of people, but my gift is helping people. My gift is encouraging people, pouring back into the youth. So as long as I'm doing that, I'm good. Now, I do push a lot, and I don't look at myself as a success similar to her. I mean, you can ask my wife, I'm constantly talking about, I need to do this. Look at this person. I can't believe I'm so far behind. But what I got to know is, like, you got your own lane, and people, like, run their own race. And so, I had to learn to look at myself as a success because I always compare myself to people who had much different upbringings than me. But if I look at the people that I grew up with, they're looking at me like, yeah, you made it. Yeah.
I would even add to that. I think often there's a piece of, you said it a little bit, like you have these goals, these aspirations, these targets, and then usually as you mature and you get to them, you either want more or you realize like that really wasn't what I wanted anyway.
Yes.
Like one of the two happens.
Yeah.
It's somehow it's just weird, and I think it's just in that maturation process. But what I do think is helpful is to be content with, like, you know what, I learned something.
Right.
So I always ask people, it drives them crazy, like, what's the lesson? And in my family, they're always like, oh, here we go. But I always think if you don't learn from whatever the experience is, you'll keep chasing this, like, false narrative. And so I think there's another piece of, like, in my life right now, success, and you kind of walked in on it. I was talking about, like, how I kind of built my speaking stuff. It's just, like, doing stuff that I never thought I could do. Like, I never thought I would work at a place like this, ever. And still be here. Like, for real. Like, I got tattooed. I was just like, yo, they let me in here. Still here. Right. Like, I got a desk. This is crazy. But I also, like, I never thought I would see past the age of 18. Just because of my upbringing and the folks that I was around. Like, we grew up in a similar neighborhood. And so there were I can count. I was in a meeting there. I can count how many people that I know have died in different parks, that I know have died on different streets and stuff. And so the simple fact that, like, I made it past that goal of, like, let me just get to 18. I'm good. I'm successful at this point. Now I'm at the place where, like, I just want to spread my success to other people. And so they know, like, one of the reasons why we're friends is, like, it was part of kind of her question, like, getting that network of people. So, like, as I meet people, I'm constantly like, yo, let me know how I can help you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need? Like, she asked me to do a podcast. It was no question. I got it. Nina got a position. I'm like, yo, you need this, you need this. I'm still trying to send her a book. She didn't send me her address. Like, I'm always trying to think of, like, how can I help other people? That's success for me. Like, when I can duplicate that or pour into other people. But I think it all comes in kind of a process.
One thing I'm going to add, though, this is where I made a big mistake. When I was young, I tied my success to money. And I learned that if you chase money, it's impossible to catch it. For real. It's very impossible to catch it. And I work with a lot of people who have a lot of money, but they're not happy. So don't get caught up in chasing the wrong things. You can have a lot of money, but you miss a lot of things in your life. So don't just chase money. And you're looking at a person who loves money. So I'm telling you that.
What else you got? Go for it.
So you're speaking about money, and there's, at least for like people in my age group, in terms of like financial literacy. I just came back from like a training, and like I was talking to this guy. He's like economics business. So what advice would you give to like young financial decisions and how to like manage money, I don't know, investing.
It's very important that you learn at a young age how to manage your money. And I always tell, like, this is my biggest gripe with the educational system. They don't teach you real life stuff. Like, when you get out there, you need money management, you need interpersonal, be able to introduce yourself, to be able to set goals. My biggest thing for money is, as you're young, you gotta learn these 3 principles: save a little, spend a little, give a little. So you always gotta set aside, even if you're making $100 a week, you gotta set aside maybe $10 to pay your future self. Because when you think about it, your money is your number one employee. It always needs to be working. So as you're saving it, then you start making it work, investing. And there's only so many things that you get paid 24 hours for, like in the stock market, like real estate. No matter where you live, you're paying every second you live there to live there. So you look at them things, and once you have a good enough safety net, then you start investing. But get in the habit of saying, like, if I make $100, all 100's not mine. 10% or 15% got to go to my future self.
That's essentially what I do.
Yeah.
No, save the earlier the better. I bought my first house when I was like 25. And if we weren't saving and putting our money together, trying to figure it out, like, so if there's any advice I could give is save, and to your point, figure out ways to make it work for you. I don't have that house anymore. But I'm trying to figure things out, like what my next thing is. But if it wasn't for saving, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And then understanding how money works, to his point, like, the younger that you can understand how your money works and how it can work for you, the better off you'll be. I didn't learn until much later in the game. And in hindsight, if I could go back in time, there's so many things that I would have done differently with my money, as far as like when I was saving for retirement, when I started investing, even saving for my kids' education. You know, there's so many different things that I would have done differently had I known better. But once you know better, do better. And the great thing about now is that there's so much information out there, not just great resources, but you can go online, you can Google anything to help understand how to deal with your money. But it's very important to do that as early as you can, even at your age now.
I'm going to give you a book to read. It's called, anybody can read this, The Richest Man in Babylon. And what it is like small parables. He's read it probably, but it just teaches you about the principles of money within stories. And it'll teach you a lot just about simple stories. Richest Man in Babylon.
Is that an easy read for a teenager? Or,
Yeah.
I mean, right?
No, for sure. It is. That's why I suggest
It's small. It's short stories.
It's short stories.
Wow,
So,
that was
yeah,
good.
that's why I
I'm struggling with
suggest
that right now.
Yeah.
I really appreciate what you said.
Yeah.
Save a little towards your future self, because my 13-year-old just came at me today asking if he could spend $30 of his $64 that he just got towards Fortnite. And I was like, you want to spend half of your money on something that's intangible? Like, you can't even, what are you going to take home, you know? And so I said, if you can come up with 10 reasons on why you think that this is okay to spend, half your money that you just got, it was just gifted to him towards something like that. And so I guess being able to articulate it, like, you need to have save a little, give a little, spend a little.
Yeah.
Towards your future self.
Yeah.
Is a
Yeah.
great
So then you
advice.
set him up a little account, and then all his money, 1/3 of his money, got to go in there.
Yeah.
If you want it, I'll get it for you.
Oh, that'd be nice.
You gotta promise to read it and then come back and tell us about it.
Oh, I'm a reader.
Be on the next
Gotcha.
panel.
Yeah.
Make sure you remind me after this, so I will forget. Any other questions?
Ask away. Yes.
Yeah, so my question, you guys talked a lot about like success and you defined it, and you guys obviously have busy lives, family and everything like that. But I wanted to know, what are some steps, or what do you do to kind of take care of yourself? To kind of like, because I agree, it's obviously very important to have goals, but at what point do you guys kind of can say stop? Like, I'm gonna take a moment for myself. What is self care? I guess like look like.
That's a great question. Self-care is very important. And again, I didn't take care of myself for the longest time. Eventually, what ended up happening for me is after my divorce and everything happened, I ended up moving back home. I had to sell my house and do all those things. And one morning, I woke up and I was like, okay, I need to get back in the gym. I need to get back into fitness again. I used to love it. Why not? You know what I mean? There was a moment in time after I had my daughter, I was like 250 pounds. I was, just depressed and all of that. And once I got back in the gym and I started realizing how strong I was, I started lifting more and lifting more. and it just was a release for me. It gave me the opportunity to have like a moment for myself. And fortunately, at that time when I was living at my parents, I could leave my daughter at home and go to the gym after she was all asleep. And I go to the gym for 2 hours and get all that stress out, and I'd be good. Reading more again. So if I could pick up a book and read about anything and everything, I would do that. And then also self-care for me was actually going and getting therapy for some of the things that I had not taken care of. It's not something that's talked about within our communities at all, and it's very important to take care of your mental health. So not just your physical well-being, but your mental and spiritual health. So I, got back into reading the Bible and getting more spiritual and going back to church and really reconnecting myself with God and my family, how I could be the best mother I could be. And in taking care of myself, I realized it made me a better mother than I could ever hope to be. And I'm continuing to work on that moving forward. So yeah, that's what I do for self-care.
I'm going to be honest, I don't have a lot of self-care. I just go. Like if I'm not doing my wife or my job, then I'm doing the kids and I'm doing other people's kids. Only thing I do for myself is I get up every day at 5 a.m. and play basketball. So like my life is very imbalanced, but I get joy out of seeing other people do good. So only thing I know I got to do is I got to read my Bible every day. I got to make sure I carve out time for my wife. And then I got to make sure I carve out time for my daughter, even if it's just like, how did school go? Or like my wife, like help her with her homework. And I'm like, all right, let me put this stuff down and help. So as long as I take care of them, I think everything else is cool for me. I'm the kind of person who could just go, if everybody around me is good, then I'm good.
Another thing that I did for self-care is I started pursuing other things.
Yeah.
What else am I capable of doing besides just going to work every single day?
Yeah.
I love my daughter with all my heart. She's my first, my last, my everything. But what else can I do to stretch my mind? And so my co-host is actually here. She's sitting right over there. We started a podcast called #WorkInProgress. And it was another way for us to release and just talk about stuff. Get things off my chest, pursue other things that I never dreamt of doing. I also then started a small consulting business where I talk to small businesses about standard operating practices, how can you, work smarter, work differently. All of those things I incorporate in self-care because it's what I want to do for myself, not for someone else.
Mandy, can I put you on the spot for 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
What's one thing you wish PJ would do more for himself?
Well, this is our daughter as well,
Yeah.
loved that question. We both looked at each other like, he better not answer that
I
question.
saw the look.
Take care of himself.
I saw the look.
But that would be my biggest thing is like, he is, everything that he says, he is always on for other people. Yeah. And I truly don't see him being on necessarily for himself. And I don't even know if he knows what that looks like, feels like, sounds like to himself. So right now he's in the midst of like going after his goals and accomplishing his goals, and he's on the up, and it's amazing to see. And I think at the end of all this, there will be an opportunity for him to step back and say, wow, look what I've done. Look at all these people that I've cared for. We're all good. And so now what does good look like for me, And so that's why we enjoyed some of these questions, because we kind of giggled a little bit because, what is success? What do you do to balance? And I think he's still on that up. So it's a very exciting time for that for now. And so, but of course, as his wife, I'm always like, maybe you should go to sleep now. Like, maybe you should stop doing that. Like, maybe you should tell him no. Like, maybe you should, remember we used to do this? Or, like, lately I've been like, remember we used to go on walks all the time together? We don't go on walks anymore together. Like, but I know it's all a part of the process. And that's my job, though, right? That's my job, to keep that in his ear and keep him, try to find some kind of balance. But yeah.
I did that on purpose because he knows we have honest conversations.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's good to hear, like I can say something, and then when she says something, or she says something, and I can say something, and then you got 4 people like, maybe I should say something like that. I heard that like 4 times.
Right.
Yeah. But you both spoke on it, that you didn't, when you're in process of that grind, you do forget about yourself,
And it's like, it's not easy.
Yeah,
You
that's
gotta
the
go
last
after
on the
it.
list. But then it's always, like you were kind of speaking to, that like when you do find that moment where you're like, hold on, I need to take a few steps back and figure out, like getting back in the gym and doing all these things, you're better self. So just
But that's
time
why
and
I always say, this is my message to everybody. This is the biggest thing. Do what you love. Because if you do what you love, there's no burnout. I love working with people. I love training with kids. So I train kids at 6 a.m. I go to work for 10 hours, and then I train kids again. And then I come home and be 10 o'clock, and I'll be looking at videos of how to train kids, how to coach my kids. Yeah, so, like, this is what I love doing that. So then I wake up early, watch CNBC. Like, this is just my life. I love it. So it doesn't seem like I don't care for myself. I go to bed a lot of times without eating. My wife's like, when the last time you ate? I'm like, oh, maybe yesterday.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Any other questions? This is good. Go for it.
So in terms of like your work environment and the people you are around, and I don't know what it's like at Target or in investment banking, how do you like advocate for yourself and say, or you know, like I need to walk away, or in those moments where it's like it's tough. So how do you handle like conflict? And as a person of color, if you don't mind sharing.
I'll go or if you're going to go.
You can go.
Okay, so, like for me, that's a good question.
Give it real.
Yeah, okay, no, I am. So I work in Wells Fargo. There's no other black advisors. So, and there's no advisors my age. The average age of like advisors is 55. So I'm the youngest person and I'm the only black person. So that right there was like, real shock. So I'm the first. I'm paving the way. One thing that I was lucky to do, and I always tell people this, when you're in your 20s or 30s and you're going for a good job, it doesn't matter about the money. Get under the right mentorship, because having the right boss will change your whole perspective and change your whole trajectory of your career. Now, I got a boss who's made tens of millions of dollars, but he values work-life balance. So when he sees and he advocates for me as a young black man in this field where there's not a lot, where we're just less than 1%. So he advocates for me. So having him, seeing him advocate for me, step out on a limb, refer me, give me business, and say, man, go home and go kiss your wife, go spend time with your kids. That helps me to be able to advocate for myself. At first, I was real timid. You can ask my wife. Like, I would say, man, people ain't giving me money because I'm black. For real. Because when you're dealing with older people who are 50 plus, they feel like you haven't lived enough as long as them. You haven't had enough life experiences. I wasn't making money when 08 happened. So I haven't lived through like a market crash. But then, as I start to look, I say, if you got the gift and you educated enough and you can provide value to people, then it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if you're yellow, pink, blue, or black. People will hire you. So once I got over that and I said, okay, let me educate myself and refine my craft and add so much value to somebody that they can't say no. And so then that's where I'm coming to. So that's how I combat that, by just being better. And I'm not going to lie, you're going to have to be double better. It's not a racist thing. It's not nothing. Being, especially a young black woman, you got to be, it's even less of them than it is young black men or anybody else. You got to be double better. And I'm telling my daughter that. It's just what it is. It's nothing against it, but this is the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what you said. In order for me to move forward in my career, I definitely had to get some good mentors in my life and in my career. Also, to his point, yeah, you do have to be better. Target is diverse, but not diverse enough to say like, wow, we've seen so many women of color, we just know that you can succeed. I mean, in the area that I'm in right now, there's 2 senior managers and there's no, that are of color, excuse me. There are no VPs of color. So it's very important that you learn how to advocate for yourself as well. Showcase your talent, show what you can do. I love when you said, kind of similarly, like, know your worth, know your value. Know what you bring to the table. So when you do come to, review time or whatever, you say, hey, this is what I've brought to the table. This is what I've done this year. Here's where I'm trying to go. Do you support me? I think a long time ago, people felt like they had to stay in one place or stay in one position. Nowadays, millennials, Generation Z, like if it's not working for them, they're going to leave. and it's because you know your worth, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So go after what you want. And another thing that I would add is, don't burn your bridges. It's very, very important, regardless of where you're trying to go. Do the best job that you can, develop and establish the best relationships that you can so that you can move forward, because you never know when you'll meet that boss or that coworker that can actually help you to get to the next level again. So everything that you said, plus, knowing your worth. And I would also say, being an African American woman in corporate America is not easy. I've had to learn about so many things and how I wanted to show up for myself, to be my true self. When you think about even, the way that you look, how you dress, remember we had that conversation, your hair, all of those different things, your tone of voice, right? Being, not being seen. And I remember, I'll show you a quick story. So when I first started, I was so excited. I was like, yes, I'm going to do this right. And I was in a meeting, and everyone was sitting around me, had senior buyers, everything like that. And something was said, and I didn't agree with it. And so I was like, this is what I think, and this is how I feel. And I felt like I was straightforward, but I wasn't rude or disrespectful. And so my first review came around, and my boss said, you're doing a great job. You hit all your numbers. It's your tone. Just kind of watch your tone. And I'm thinking to myself, like, well, what do you mean? So I asked her, what do you mean? She's like, well, you're a little direct. And I'm like, direct? And it really had me thinking, like, how am I coming across to these people? So I would ask questions like, do you think I'm too direct? Like, or I asked my mentor, do you think I'm too direct? And she was a woman of color, and she's like, that's just general feedback for being a black woman. You're seen as being, you're too strong, aggressive, thank you. And I struggled with that for so long. I don't anymore. I'm going to show up how I show up. I had to learn that over time, and it's okay to be direct as long as you're respectful. And definitely you do want to watch, whatever tone it is, you want to come off as rude, but if you know what you're talking about, say it. Don't be afraid to show what you know, showcase what you know, because you know your worth, you know your job, you know what you're doing, you've been doing it for a long time. Have that confidence, so when you walk into a boardroom, you walk into a meeting, this is who I am, this is what I know, here's how it's coming out of my mouth.
Oh, I'd like to add to that. As her friend and knowing her, and we're talking about value and worth and, being able to stand up and speak your voice. I think one of the things that you shouldn't be afraid to do too is speak your non-negotiables. One of the things that she told me was that in her role now, she made it known, like, I have a daughter. This comes first. This is my priority. Are you able to work with this schedule? Because if not, let's have this conversation now. So I think if you know your worth and what you can bring to the table, it doesn't hurt to say, but here's what I need as well, leveraging that so that you can have your work-life balance.
And if you're trying to negotiate like a salary or something like that, do your research, especially understand the area that you're in. Ask questions, not necessarily within your, people that you work with, but other people that are doing similar work to understand what are they getting paid. Because at the end of the day, I think we're making 60 cents on the dollar compared to men. And so it's very important to understand, like, what's the pay rate in that industry. So when you are going into that review, you know what people are getting paid, so you know what you're going to offer, put down on the table. This is what I've done this year, and this is where I think I should be based off of my results. You got to have the results, though, to back up. So you can't walk in and say, pay me more, and you aren't, you're not making good results. So make sure that you've done your research, you have the results to back up your worth, and then just make sure, just ask for what you know that you're worth, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Eli, and then wrap up. Ellie, I'm sorry.
You both touched on mentorship. So, what were some of the things that you saw or that you liked about, finding those people to mentor you, and what are the things that you have taken so that you can now become mentors for others?
What I wanted to have in a good mentor was somebody who wasn't afraid to tell me the truth. I wanted somebody that would look at me and say, you know what, Francine, you are wrong here. Or say, you know what, Francine, you are right here. Or say, Francine, yeah, I see what you did here, but maybe here's what you could have done to do it a little bit differently. You really want somebody that will support you and listen to you, but also be willing to tell you the truth. It's always good to have cheerleaders, that's great, but to have somebody that you respect to tell you what you've done wrong is super important because it allows you to grow. So I was able to find mentors that way. And I did talk to a couple of different people before settling on a couple of good mentors that really had my back. Also, just working with people in general who had moved on, but they saw what I brought to the table. When I was ready to make a move to a different position, they were able to advocate for me. So in turn, I've tried to provide the same thing to the people that I mentor now at work. And again, being able to be somebody that listens to them, that understands what they're going through, and then is honest. I also do reverse mentorship from a diversity and inclusion perspective. So I mentor leaders to let them know, like, hey, when it comes to hiring and retention, here's what you should look for. You're probably not doing a great job here. Here's how we can make it better. So I try to be the mentor that I want to have in my career to somebody else.
She's spot on. Like to have, my mentor, I was blessed that he was brought to me, just our paths crossed. God brought him to me. But one thing he does for me, which I really appreciate, being in this field with, very little diversity, very, very little diversity, you need somebody who's going to advocate for you, but also keep it real. So, like, we can be in a meeting with our bosses, our regional manager, all of that. We leave the meeting, then he tells me, like, okay, this person is talking like this, they don't truly believe in me. And that is good for me to know, because what I got to get better at is being able to read people and having the right mentors who can say, look, do this, but don't do that. Or like he keeps it real with me. She talk about dress. I'm very flashy. So you got to dial that back when you're in the, in the financial industry. But my partner is the one who who kind of told me that. So I remember when I came into the job, we're getting fitted for clothes and everything. And he says, you got to buy these white shirts and buy these certain suits. And I'm like, okay, we're getting fitted. When I seen the prices on the things, I said, I had talked to you in the hall. Like, I can't pay for these. He's like, I didn't tell you to pay. So he bought these suits, bought me shirts, bought me everything. Just having him invest in you. You need somebody who's going to invest in you and who's going to go in front, and when you're not in the meetings, open them doors for you so you can walk through. That's one of my mentors. Now, the other mentor I got is now a very successful black man, because my partner is white man. So a very successful black man, Colbert. So Colbert and this other guy, Kevin Warren, who's the CEO of the Vikings, they're very, very prominent black men. And so just to see how they carry themselves and to be, I want to be prominent and to help, pay it back. So then I look at how they carry themselves. I look at the vehicles they drive. All of that kind of stuff makes a big difference for me. So you got to have like several different mentors like she talked about from various fields and who can add to you in different ways. And then as far as like mentoring other people, my biggest thing is I want to not be a crab in a bucket. Like, a lot of the people that I've been around is you can't be successful and I can't. So one of us got to give up. Or I got to down you so I can take your spot. Where I'm not like that. So I want to get out and just like pull you back and then the next person climb over both of us and so we can keep passing people forward. So I try to be that. Like, trying to push people forward. Like anytime I can advocate for somebody, I'll stick my neck out. Even if I think I'm going to get burned and you're not qualified, let's see. Because that's the only way. I can get you into places that I know you can't get yourself into. So let me open these doors for you. As long as you want it, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help you.
Oh yeah. So I guess for a final question, this would be good. But if you could go back and give your teenage or college age self a piece of advice, just like whether you wish you knew then that you know now, what would it be?
That was my last question too.
That was good. Oh, I didn't think about that. Do you know?
Yeah. I would tell myself 100% it's going to work out and live like you can't fail. Because the only thing you can do is fail your way to success. So I was so afraid to fail that I wouldn't do a lot of stuff. So, but now I learned that just do it, fail, and then you know what not to do. and do it again, fail, and you know what not to do. Eventually, you're gonna become successful. So operate as if you can never fail. I tell my daughter that there's no way you can fail, baby. There's no way you can fail. So operate like that.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah, I would have told myself the same thing. I would tell myself, it's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. I was the same way. I hated making a mistake. And when I made a mistake, I would harp on myself so bad. There's always a way to work through everything and anything. So even if you do fail, if you do make a mistake, get up, you can dust yourself off. It may take some time. Yeah, you may have to reconcile with your failure, but learn from it. And if you're learning from your mistakes, everything is going to be okay. And sometimes you might make the same mistake twice. Sometimes, like, I will never do that again.
Right.
And then a couple of years later, you make that same mistake. You're like, why did I do that? Oh my goodness. But the point is, as long as you're learning from your mistake and you're growing, everything is going to be okay. So I would have probably told myself the same thing. Make mistakes, fail, it's okay. You'll be all right. Everything will work out.
So last thing I want to say is always remember this. If you have a lot of success with no struggle, that's because somebody struggled before you. If you have a lot of struggle and not a lot of success, that means somebody's coming after you. So you're paving the way. So don't ever forget that. So I had a lot of success because I had people before me pave the way. I didn't have a lot of struggles. Now I'm having a lot of struggles in this industry and I'm finding my way. And success is coming, but I know I'm opening the door for somebody else. So that's always what it is. It's one of the two.
See, I was going to say something, but I ain't going to. No, I really appreciate both of you for doing this and taking time out of your night to talk to us. Can we give it up? So I say all the time, the folks that we bring, they're approachable, and so in the invite, there's a LinkedIn. Francine was added later, so I will get. Are you on LinkedIn?
I am.
Oh, okay. I tried to find her. I couldn't find her. But we'll get their contact info. And thank you, Nora. This is why Nora's here. Yes, I love it.
We want to know what you think.
You need people who can help you in all ways. So we want to know what you think. So there's an evaluation form. You cannot leave until you fill it out. We're going to hold you hostage.
This just helps us
Please. Yeah, it just helps us.
make these better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get it right.
And if there are ideas, stuff that you wish we would have done, for those of y'all who've been to multiple ones, like, just give us feedback, please. So we are officially done. I'm gonna put some music on, and we can kind of mingle, hang as long as you want. And I know, yep, and parking. I was saying, I know that's the area. If you did park in the building, I got parking for you. Should've told me. You come here
I
all
know that
the
for the
time.
meetings, but I didn't know if this was the same.
Listen, anytime you do something with me here, park in the building. I'm sorry. That's all I got you.
Well, I do. Well, one person.
Yeah, John said
Trying to figure out.
Well, the reason why
I was gonna
asked him about
speaker tonight. I was just like,
Okay. No, I didn't know if that's what I did. And then I didn't know how much one time I got the only one I think I was there
Of course.
and she's and Anna was right there. I was so figure out how I first started working at the city. We were driving down the block and I like this business was paying for it, wanted to cry. Like, Mom, you know, I really was distraught. And I was 25. So the city was for sure parking, but like It's
Oh,
later.
we would
She
stay
needs
4
to
times
develop.
already.
She needs to develop.
And I probably never.
Develop confidence.
Oh,
It's a hassle.
And she plays great.
Say, yeah,
It takes forever. Yeah. Never
grab my
hard.
bag, baby. Grab my
Yeah,
bag.
they have like a card. Like that's what I'm trying to do.
No,
It's like
I'm a helper. 100%. That's all you gotta say. Let's see what I can do.
It don't really matter until like then you might have to like kind of maneuver it. Right. But
We got kids all over.
that's how I've been able to let it to
I got you.
I'm son, I'm like,
For real?
One big girl, one of my big girls just moved to.
That's part of the reason why I don't post
Right.
So,
Yep.
I'm gonna show you why.
Yep. That's real. That's awesome. How is it?
So she's still my time.
I got you.
For good job. I'm already knowing. Yeah. I'm already knowing.
I don't know. So this is my.
Hi, Tracy.
This is
Oh.
Hi. What organization do you guys work with?
I'm a student and I come from I'm in
Oh, you guys are nervous scholars. Okay, that's so awesome. So I work for the city. Yeah, I'm the director of softball. Yeah. That's so funny. There's an early scholar.
It's so nice to meet you.
Okay, there.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Have your own firm and all that great
stuff.
That's so awesome.
Yes. We have a couple.
Not in the department.
I know, and I was like, when I see you walking in the house,
How's your second one?
Oh,
yes,
I know.
and that's
Every, like, I
I
have
know
$100
exactly what
in
happened.
summer too.
Essentially,
Gabby, she's, I call her Gabby, her name is Gabriella. You guys know Gabriella? She's the first year, you guys second year? Okay, you're the third year. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so that's amazing. I see you guys again. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, exactly. Obviously, I'll find out. So I've been working with her for a little while as a program manager. I was so excited. Like, years and years ago, all about and I was asking her about me. Nice to meet you.
I'm 34, so I got you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. Oh, great. Yes, I'm ready. Thank you. Oh, wonderful.
I'm gonna get call me. Listen,
I'm like so I'm in third year school.
Okay.
Call me or email.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I'm a nice to meet you.
I literally just had to
Where you graduating from?
Yeah, I'm saying at the same. Okay.
But it can look as whatever, just not live
How's that?
It's hard because I'm so used to I was doing college for a while. Okay. And trying now I'm trying
Yeah.
to and like I really I was
It's so good.
you know,
Oh, you were at the thing.
like relationships
The building nice.
but we have not like just like
I love it. She's always keen.
I do like failure.
Yeah, inspire your mom.
And there's gonna be times you want to do it, don't. So just
Right.
be prepared for it.
Like,
Don't be mad because it's just so out of
And don't be mad for 2 seconds.
No.
And you can be mad for a second,
Be mad.
and then move on. Work
Just
on your
understand.
Yeah.
I'm scared that
So,
I
I don't
Yeah, my
take
top
it
is
so
like
that's
actually
I know my
North Star is so
I'd be interested in